Welcome to the Three Questions Webcast series. I'm Wayne Baxter, Executive Director with One Capital Management. At One Capital Management, we develop and implement strategies that enable our clients to grow, protect, and ultimately distribute their wealth. And we do that by offering investment wealth management services. Thank you for taking time to check us out. My clients are often referred to as cross-border clients. Now, why is that? Well, it's because they're either U.S. or Canadian residents who invest in U.S. and or Canadian dollar denominated securities like stocks, bonds, ETFs. Our process for advising our clients includes an in-depth discovery and diagnostic analysis of their wealth management goals and objectives. And for anyone looking to retire or has already retired, retirement planning obviously is essential. And as the old saying goes, those who fail to plan to fail. Retirement planning is indeed multifaceted. There are many different areas that need to be addressed and considered. For example, estate and tax planning, risk management, cash flow and liquidity planning. And for most investors, they're going to want to review their real estate goals and objectives. In the first of a two-part Three Questions webcast, we'll be reviewing the three questions pre-retired investors should ask before deciding to sell their home. Joining me is Will Flanagan. Will is a real estate agent with Compass here in Southern California, and Will helps his clients buy and sell property throughout the LA County, and has intimate knowledge of Pasadena, Burbank, Glendale, the Hollywood Hills, and Beverly Hills. Now, what makes Will an ideal subject matter expert for the Three Questions webcast is that he is a senior real estate specialist. And this is a designation that means that Will has the knowledge and expertise to guide home buyers and sellers over the age of 50 through these major financial and lifestyle transitions. Will, first of all, I want to thank you for making time for me today and making time for the Three Questions webcast. Appreciate you joining me.
Thank you, Wayne. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe you just sort of illuminate us a little bit or educate a little bit about on this designation as a senior real estate specialist. What's that entail from your point of view? How do you use that expertise to advise your clients? Maybe a bit more granular.
Well, it really helps me understand the needs of people that are, we'll call them the baby boom generation, but it's generally anybody who's over 55 as they're getting ready to potentially downsize or retire. These are major life-changing events. And so being the shorthand, we call it an SRES, Senior Residential Real Estate Specialist. It just means that I've been trained in understanding this demographic and understanding what their particular needs are, some of the challenges that go along with that stage of life. It's a very different set of considerations than somebody who might be, for example, a first-time home buyer, or somebody who's going through a life change and they need to sell their home because their family is growing. Seniors have very different special needs, and so that just helps me understand who they are.
Yeah, and
my kid.
And as we my practice works with clients all over the United States and Canada. Obviously, have some here in Southern California as well, for sure. But I think that the basic principles that we're going to cover today, I think you would agree would be applicable whether you're living in Southern California, in Texas, Pacific Northwest, or even up in Canada. The same basic principles apply here. So again, I really appreciate you making time for this. And actually, again, this is going to be a two-part series. This is part one. And as I mentioned previously, the idea of retirement planning, as you know, is really sort of multifaceted. There are many different areas that we need to address. And, for many of my clients in the United States and Canada, taking into consideration their real estate goals ought to be front and center. And this is along with their cash flow needs, and probably go hand in hand. And again, this whole idea that, those who fail to plan will, as you know, they're planning to fail whether they know it or not. So let's just jump right into these three questions that pre-retired investors should be asking before they sell their home. The first question, I think you would agree, I'm going to put to you, is really should be asked about the home that they're living in now, is does this home that we're living in currently really work for us? Maybe you could talk a little about that from the idea of a real estate professional.
Sure. And that's really where everything has to start, evaluating the property and the people that are living in it. Now, if you had a property that, for example, I have clients who, they might have bought a home 30 years ago, and they had a growing family. Maybe they had 2, 3, 4 kids even. Mm-hmm. And so that house met their needs when they were, in the prime of their earning, and they were, they had the busy life with multiple kids. Now the kids are all grown, they're out of the house. They have a, 3,000 square foot home with a big lot that maybe was great when you had kids that could run around in the back. But, as you get older, and Wayne and I are both in the same vintage, born in the early 60s.
You didn't have to bring that up.
We qualify as baby boomers. And
definitely.
So I think that, as you get to that stage in life, you start thinking and looking around and going, do I really need all this house?
And I think you'd also add to that, sorry to interrupt, Will, but the other thing you might want to consider, not just the quality of the house, but even the neighborhood. What happened? I've talked to people wanted to move, not just because of that, but because all their friends have moved away from their neighborhood.
That's right. That's right. And it's a big deal, because if you grew up in a neighborhood, like I grew up in Michigan, right? And my neighborhood, there were literally dozens of kids as I grew up. Our neighborhood was, full of kids. By the time my mom, who stayed in the house until she passed away several years ago, that cycle had already been through, and there were new families coming in. And, it feels a little weird. She was fine because she loved the house, but it can feel a little awkward to be, the only person in the neighborhood without a bunch of kids running around. And it kind of separates you from maybe the people that you, spend a bulk of your life with. So these are the kind of considerations overall. But, when you look at the specifics of the house, maintaining a large house, it doesn't even have to be that large of a house, but maintaining a house, especially a house that you've been in for years, is a constant, I don't want to say it's a battle, but it's definitely something that you have to maintain. And, the upkeep on whether it's the roof or the trees. I have a lot of trees around my house here in Burbank. And I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars we spent on, taking some trees down and maintaining them over the past few years, because they're getting older and they're dangerous if you don't take care of them. So these are the kind of things that I discuss with people who are thinking about downsizing. Does this house really work anymore for you? And if the answer is no, it doesn't, then it's easy. But some people, there's a lot of emotion attached to a home. You built up a life there, you have a lot of memories. So it's you have to balance that desire to look at a home just as an investment, and also understand that the home is where you live and it's where you created memories. So
there's a qualitative and a quantitative aspect to this discussion. It isn't merely dollars and cents. And conversely, it isn't only, the sort of history. You have to be pragmatic to some degree.
Right. And that's, quite honestly, that's one of the hardest parts for folks who are thinking about downsizing. They may realize and recognize that the home, they haven't outgrown the home. The home has basically outgrown them. And, as you think about, what do I want to do with my retirement? Do I want to travel more? Well, if you do want to travel more, or just, spend more time away from the home, then those are the kind of considerations that you go, I really don't need to, spend the time and money maintaining this yard or keeping this house up and keeping it clean, or the money to pay somebody to come in and keep it clean, when I'd be just as happy in a smaller home, maybe in the same neighborhood. I've had that happen quite often, where people who don't want to leave their neighborhood, they like the area, they know the area, but they just want a smaller home. So, going through those kind of checklists of, does the house work for me anymore, is a combination of the, the financial, pragmatic considerations, but also the emotional considerations, and what is tying you to that neighborhood, what is tying you to that house. So, my job as a as a realtor is to kind of understand where those people are coming from and then help them achieve their goal of, maximizing return on that investment that they put a lot of money and love into over the years, and then finding a place that will help them build a new place.
Well, you just prompted me to think of a couple I'm working with up in Vancouver, British Columbia. They were referred to me. They own a condo that they live in Vancouver, in downtown Vancouver, and they love where they live. But when we did all the forecasting, what they come to me with is, you know what? We're dual citizens. We can live in both countries, most Canada, US. We'd like to spend a good part of our year down in Palm Desert. When we did the analysis, we come up with a couple different scenarios, and both of them, they conceded that, they don't need this very pricey condo, right? That's taking up a lot of their cash flow so what we ultimately ended up doing is putting together a plan where they will sell their existing condo, get a smaller property here. And what they come away with is a significant travel budget, which really appealed to them. So in their case, it was a matter of, like you talked about, we don't want to be sort of house rich at the expense of being able to live the lives the way we want to. So I think that's a perfect example of the one you described, and it just made me think of that couple and the fact that we were able to put together a strategy, and they have a very significant travel budget that will allow them not only to spend, maybe 3 or 4 months in Palm Desert, but also do some traveling as well. So cash flow planning is
right. And with the, growth and I guess acceptance of Airbnb and these kind of long-term travel, it doesn't feel like, not that Airbnbs are not, they have a cost obviously, but it doesn't feel like you're living in a hotel. So,
exactly.
For people that want to spend a month at a time wherever traveling and getting,
I can vouch for that.
Airbnb has really been a godsend for a lot of people because, you want to feel like you're in a place if you're going to travel. And if you establish a relationship with somebody who does have an Airbnb, you can often, book it a year in advance. And so it does kind of feel like your house. So, and I've had that conversation with several people who are doing exactly what you're suggesting, cashing out of their house, maybe downsizing to a smaller house, and then taking the rest of the money and using it to travel.
Yeah. Okay. So great first stab at this. The second question I want to get to, obviously, to me is you would think almost be number one, but we say it's number two, and that is, how much can I get if I sell my house? So, Will, you are the real estate guru here, so I'm going to turn this one over to you.
Well, that's obviously very, very property specific. The recent shift that we've seen in rise in interest rates has kind of slowed the price appreciation that people can expect. I don't think it's going to lead to, price drops. Everything, the old saw location, which is related to real estate. So obviously a particular market might have some price drops coming in the next 6 to 12 months. But I think those are the markets that saw an incredibly high rise in their valuations. Off the top of my head, I can say a city like Boise, Idaho, which I just read this morning, 2 years ago, before the pandemic, the median home price in Boise was about $350,000. Just last month, it was up to $550,000. So you can see a $200,000 price, that's almost double. And so if I had bought a house in Boise over the last couple of years, I might be concerned if I was thinking about selling. Now, if you're not planning on selling, you're fine. But if you're planning on selling, the property might drop a little bit. But those markets are, they're going to be known to people, and, you're going to consult with your local realtor to find out. But in terms of, how much your property is worth, there's two aspects to that. One is, if you sell it just as is and you don't do any work and you don't prep it, it's not going to get the most money, and it's probably going to take longer to sell. But if you're willing to, and if you can afford to to move into a new place, whether you rent or you have another place in mind and you buy, and this is where talking to somebody like Wayne can be very helpful in conjunction with your lender. to do a bridge loan or to do other financing that'll get you into a new house before you sell your current house, I always recommend that as the best way to go. Because once you vacate your house, then you have the option to, do the kinds of things that will dramatically increase the valuation when you sell it. For example, you can see these beautiful hardwood floors behind me in my house. So we just redid these floors. It was a pain. I'll just be honest with you. We had all the furniture that you see behind you, yours truly, and a couple of guys, moved it out of this room and moved it into other parts of the house so that the guys could come in and do these floors. But a recent study from the National Association of Realtors said that just refurnishing these hardwood floors like we did here, it's a 146% return on investment for the average home. So, talking to a local realtor, talking to an experienced realtor about what are the kinds of things you should invest in to get the biggest return on your investment is really critical. The number one thing I always recommend everybody do is paint. If you can paint your house, interior and exterior, it will have a tremendous, bump in the value. Other things you have to do, if you've been living in the house and it has a roof that has a problem, or you have other major parts of the house that have issues, repair them if you can. Work with a company like Compass. Compass actually will give you the money up front to do this. Other brokerages around the country have similar programs, not the same as Compass. Compass doesn't charge you any money for that. It's an interest-free loan that they'll give you up to 5% of the value of the listing. So on $1 million house, that's $50,000 that you can put into the house to, do the updates, do the staging. Because if you don't stage your house, quite honestly, people can't really envision how they're going to look, how the house is going to look when it's lived in. And that's really important. So, good brokers will know how to do this. I think I'm very good at that with helping people to understand that although I try to tell people, look, it's not a cost, it's an investment. You're investing in making your house more attractive. And when you make your house more attractive, you're going to attract more people. And when you attract more people, you're going to get higher offers. And it's been proven time and again. So the question of what's my house worth, it has to go through a lot of questions. I have a client right now. They don't want to do anything to the house. They just want to sell it as is. And I explained the situation to them and they said, it's fine. We understand. The house isn't in terrible shape, but I think with a small investment of $10,000 or $15,000, they could potentially generate, an extra $50,000 or $75,000 on return, but they're not interested in doing that. Well, that's fine.
So whether they do it to, put in some beautiful flooring like you have, or renovate the kitchen or the bathrooms, the idea is that Compass is going to provide them with some liquidity to make that happen. Right. It's a great way to start. When you're talking about home prices, one of the things that I was thinking about is a report that I just saw here in the last few days about the fact that there's somewhere like a 3 million unit shortage of properties, both single and multi-use multi-house, multi-family properties in the US. You would have to think that that's going to have some sort of ballast to keep home prices from significantly correcting, regardless of what happens with interest rates. And I know it's very regional, like it isn't across the board, but that has to give some protection to home values. And the fact that, you got to question how aggressive home builders are going to be with rates going higher. So there's going to be a scarcity of properties, which I guess if you're a seller, gives you some sense of confidence.
100%. There's the last statistic I read, there was 4.6 million home shortage. And this resulted from the previous market crash in 2008 and 2009. So when that market crashed in the last great recession that we had, there were a lot of home builders that just got out of the business. There were also, and even more critically, but not mentioned as much, there were a lot of carpenters, a lot of tradespeople who also got out of the business. And when you have a shortage of labor and you don't have the financing going on, so basically from 2009 until about 2014, for 5 years, we were dramatically below what our yearly production of homes should have been. That's why we're looking at a 3 or 4 million home shortage nationwide. And particular
And that's not
areas
going to
make
be
it even
repaired
harder.
anytime soon. That's something you can't fix overnight. That's going to take
Right.
a lot of
Right.
time.
And they're trying to address it. There's the NIMBYism that goes on, the not in my backyard, which is particularly acute here in California. I know it's also in other parts of the country where, a new housing development is just not on the table. It's just going to take too long. I just read yesterday, in San Francisco, it takes an average of 297 days to get approval to build a new property. 297 days. It's almost 3 years for the permitting process to happen on just one new development. So you can see how, if you're a developer and you're thinking about building a home, and you can't predict what the market's going to look like in 2 or 3 years. And that's just to get the permit. That's not even to begin construction. So, if it's 3 years to get the permit and then another year or two to get the construction finalized, try to project out by 5 years. You don't know what the market's going to look like. So it makes people that are putting, millions or tens of millions or potentially hundreds of millions of dollars into these developments very risk averse, because, even though they can project that we have a coming housing shortage, or we currently have a housing shortage, they don't know what the market's going to look like. They couldn't predict COVID. They couldn't predict, we were going to see a historic interest rate bump that we saw in the last 3 months. So uncertainty is it's the biggest issue that I think a lot of developers are worried about. Now, individual home flippers, they might be on a shorter time frame because it's a one project, but that's not going to satisfy, the bulk of the needs.
That's not going to make up the $3 to $4 million housing shortage that we have here in the U.S.
Right. And that's because it's not creating new housing. It's just basically taking.
You're just recycling the ones that are already there anyway. So
100%.
Great response there, Will. Thanks a lot. So I want to get to the third question, which admittedly is a little quasi retirement planning as well as real estate related. But the question is, how much money do we need to cover our expenses over an extended period of years? And it kind of ties back into the last question, but I might throw my 2 cents worth in on this one a little bit. But before I do, I just want to, I'm sure that's a question that you must often get when people come to you with the idea of looking at whether they should sell their house and what the value of it is. And then I'm sure that must come into your discussion when you're having discussions with clients that are talking about potentially relocating or selling their house.
It does, but I think that's where, for me, I try to approach the transaction as a team effort. So having them talk to their financial planner, having them talk to their lender, having the lender and the financial planner and or me involved in a conversation about, what makes the most sense. Because just because you can afford to buy something doesn't necessarily mean you should buy it. I have a good friend who sells long-term care insurance, and he says, I can't tell you how many people will call me up as they get news of some kind of new development in their health, and it's too late. Yeah. They can't get the long-term care insurance that they need. So it's a broader question about financial planning, and the proceeds from the sale of your home, if you're downsizing, can be used in a variety of ways. I know one of the ways that's becoming popular, at least was before the bump in interest rates, was using a reverse mortgage actually to purchase a home. And people get scared about reverse mortgages, but they're basically the same as a regular mortgage. They just, it's a negative amortization, and so they're growing against you, but they can be a lifesaver for a lot of people if you need it. If you don't, maybe, and you want to leave money to your children in the form of your home, that's another way. But really talking to your estate planning attorney, if you have one, your CPA, your financial planner, your lender, your realtor, these are the people that you should be consulting with before you make that big decision about, what are we going to do with the proceeds from the sale? And do we have enough then to, purchase the next home that we're going to downsize into, or do like Wayne said, keep enough money in a travel pool and maybe just stay on the road.
Right. So,
It sounds pretty great.
I will say this, that music to my ears. I will say that right off the top here. I think the key part, again, going back to the planning aspect, is having those conversations, not just about what is my house worth, but how do I envision our lives unfolding, and not just over the next 6 months to 2 years, but we need to really think out. And we're talking about baby boomers, potentially somewhere between 55, 65, 70 some odd years old. We have to assume a lifespan of active, busy lifespan that goes well into your, you could say into your early 80s. So you have to do, like we do for many of our clients, like a 20-year capital forecast. And, obviously we had to make assumptions for inflation and interest and taxes, but let's take a look at those expenses and how if you could write the script, how would you like to see your lives unfold? What are some of the things you'd like to do? And that's an example for the case I talked to you about with the couple up in Vancouver. That's how we kind of come to those conclusions. We showed them a couple options. One option was for them was actually considering purchasing another property. And when we did that, they realized that they wouldn't have the free cash flow that they wanted, and there were some tax implications. So they went with the rental of the property as opposed to an outright purchase, right? There were lots of factors that went into that decision. But again, doing the forecasting and analysis and having those discussions and, involving other subject matter experts, really is a key part of this whole thing.
It's true. And I was just showing a property last week to a woman who's, her husband and her are getting ready to retire, and they're going to move out to LA to be closer to their adult children. And there was one particular house that we walked through, and she really liked the house a lot, but it basically had a long stairway that went up to the front door. It was kind of above the garage. And she's healthy, she's in good condition right now, but she said, "What do you think of this house?" And I said, I'm concerned about long-term, this is going to be your forever home. You're going to retire and stay here, right? She said, "Yeah, we don't plan on moving again." I said, "Well, you're in your mid 60s now, but 10 or 15 years from now, going up and down those stairs several times a day, it might not be so great. It might be something that is not even doable if you have some other medical issues come up." So I try to, there's a term that some people use, and I think it's a clever term, but I don't think it has caught on yet. Instead of calling it downsizing, we call it future sizing.
Future sizing, I like that.
Future sizing, so that you are anticipating what your life will look like in the future, and trying to manage, some of the challenges that you're going to have, not today, but 20 years from now. Well,
great conversation. We've included your contact information right on the screen here. For someone who's listening in today, maybe they just want to pick your brain. Maybe they're looking to make a purchase somewhere in the greater Los Angeles area. What would be the best way for them to contact you? Is it by phone, by email, through your website? What would you recommend?
They can always call me, text me, 310-920-1108. I always answer my phone if I'm able to, and if I don't, I get back to people the same day. That's my practice. And so just pick up the phone and call me, or if you want to kind of feel me out a little bit, you can text me, and I'll get back to you by text. But happy to chat. I think phone calls are the best way to really get a feel for people, because you just can't get the same feeling that you get in a written communication as you can in a phone call.
We're going to have you back again in the next 3 Questions Webcast. We're going to continue our discussion with Will, and we're going to again take it from the next stage, if you will, And we're going to address the 3 questions a pre-retired investor should ask before buying their next home. So now we've got to the point where we're going to look at selling, but we're going to think about the next step, which is what kind of a property should we buy. So Will, I want to thank you again, making time for us today. I appreciate it. And we'll look forward to having you back real soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks a lot, Will. That's Will Flanagan. Thanks a lot, Will. I look forward to bringing you the 3 Questions Webcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our YouTube channel. And to receive notification when our latest webcast has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.